So yeah, welcome to my presentation about the human factors of vehicle automation. So please remember to rate the session. Okay, so I'm from the University of Nottingham and I did my PhD in Leeds, and while I was in Leeds, I was driving the driving simulator one day, and that was the first time I experienced kind of automated driving. It was in kind of nice, easy conditions on the motorway, and I was first driving manually, and then the automation started. And I was sitting in the driver's seat and looking to the front, definitely. And at some point, I remember my mind was wandering. I was thinking about something else. And suddenly, kind of alarms went off and red lights went on, and I saw that there was a car standing in front of me on the motorway. And I immediately slammed on the brake, and I didn't really manage to get the car stopped in time, so I crashed into the front car. And all this time, several of my colleagues were monitoring me on screens. So it was quite embarrassing, and I came out of the driving simulator and I tried to explain to them that the brake didn't really work. But they didn't really buy it. Actually, I disconnected mentally from the driving task. So basically, I was out of the loop. So I was kind of not really able to react properly and bring the car to a stop when it was needed. So why are we developing vehicle automation? What are the benefits of this? According to the British Association of Insurers, 90% of accidents are related to human error. And so there's a lot of potential to improve traffic safety. At the same time, there are efficiency gains to be made in the traffic. So British drivers spend about 124 hours in traffic jams. And that time could be used, I don't know, either productively or for relaxing, but standing there is not really pleasant time, I'd say. And one isn't really sure about this, so there are certain risks, but in the automotive sector, there are also jobs. There are many people already working with automation, and this is also the reason why car manufacturers are the main kind of drivers of this. So the main investors into vehicle automation are the car manufacturers, then we have technology companies, and also governments. So the EU is funding a lot, but there's also, for example, at the moment, a call out by the UK government for automation projects. So let's get to some definitions at first. So when we talk about automated driving, we say that tasks that are previously done by humans are now taken over by machines. And when we talk about vehicle automation, it's often actually kind of a teamwork between the driver and the car, because automation does not necessarily mean that the driver is doing everything. When we talk about kind of the driver driving sometimes, the human driving at times, and the car driving at times, there are handover and takeover situations. So takeover situations are initiated by the driver. So what the driver could do when the vehicle is driving at the moment is to input, like to steer or to press on a pedal, brake or accelerator, and then the automation stops and the driver is driving. A handover is initiated by the vehicle. So often, say when the vehicle is reaching its limits, or when it's kind of, I'd say, not really sure about the situation, then it can issue a signal saying, okay, driver, take over. I can't do this task anymore. So that is a handover. The actual full automation is the autonomous car. That means that there is no outside control needed. So the human actually doesn't need to control the car. There doesn't even need to be a steering wheel in the car or pedals. So here we talk about proper driverless cars, where, say, a blind person could drive from A to B as well. So when we talk about automation, there are different levels. These altogether 6 levels are by the SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers. Another very common classification is that you find in the media is by the NHTSA, by the US Institute for Transportation. So let's start with the first level. It's no automation. So what the car could do is to issue some warnings, but still the driver has to drive. In this level, it could also be possible that the car is assisting with braking, but still the driver is the one who has to step on the brake pedal and to make that decision. So I put a picture of a Ford T as an example of a very simple, absolutely not automated car. In level 1, some tasks are automated. So you could, for example, have cruise control or adaptive cruise control, where the longitudinal control of the car is automated. Alternatively, the lateral control could be automated, say by a system that's steering for you and keeping you in the lane. So here's an example of a Volkswagen Golf adaptive cruise control system. If you combine the lateral and longitudinal control, we're getting over to level 2, where the car is kind of doing the driving, but the driver has to be monitoring the environment all the time and at all times be ready to intervene. So in this example, say you have adaptive cruise control and lateral control. The car is doing the steering and the car is kind of pressing the brake pedal and coasting for you, but the car, for example, wouldn't brake for you. So as it's necessary to brake, you as the driver still need to push on the brake. So Mercedes is at the moment capable of doing this kind of level 2 automation. So until here, the driver is monitoring the environment. And the car can monitor it to some degree, but the driver has to, at all times, be absolutely aware of what's around them. From level 3, the car is monitoring what's going on in the environment. So level 3 is conditional automation, where the car is able to do the driving for you. But not always, not at all times, and you need to have a capable driver at all times sitting in the driver's seat. And the car may issue a handover at any moment, and the driver needs to be there to do the driving, basically, at any time. Famous example of this level of automation is the Tesla. High automation is a level further, where you don't always need a driver kind of who would take over the driving task at all times. So there are, say for example, an automated car is able to do everything on its own on a motorway, or just drive in cities, just to kind of, and it would do that. It's reliable, and even when the driver kind of wants to take over or needs to take over, it's kind of tolerant, so you don't need to be there at all times and fully capable to take over. I put an example of a Google car here, although it's a little bit controversial where it actually is. it's quite an example of a quite a high automated level, but still not fully. And then full automation is a car without steering wheel, without pedals. It can drive from A to B fully on its own. And an example that you can find today would be like a park shuttle. This one is from Rotterdam. How full automation is working today is usually at limited speeds in limited areas. So where are we at the moment? So Audi, for example, is currently level 2 automation on the market, and level 3, where the car can do all the driving conditionally, would be on the market next year. Mercedes is at the moment capable of level 2 automation, but it already has 3 truck platoons on the roads. A platoon, has anyone not heard of platoons? Yeah, it's like an automated convoy. So on motorways you can have, say, a number of lorries kind of docking onto each other, and they drive at very short headways, which has and what you can gain from it is efficiency, and fuel usage can be quite low or quite lowered. So that's where Mercedes is at the moment. And Tesla currently has the level 3 automation, and with Google cars we are at the moment not really sure kind of whether it's level 3 or already level 4. Actually, I mean, the Google cars have been driving a lot, like millions of miles until now, but there are several takeovers recorded. Several hundreds of takeovers recorded, and several takeovers where the drivers needed to intervene or felt like they needed to intervene. And there are also several, maybe about 70, when I was reading up on this, 70 handovers where the car reached its limit and said, I don't know, I can't do this anymore, and then the driver had to continue driving. The actual proper full automation where a car can drive on its own from from one city to another is not expected to be out there for another 10 years, and that's quite an optimistic estimate. So there are others who talk about 20 or even 30 years. So we've been doing some studies in the University of Nottingham with about level 3 automation. And this participant is requesting the automation to be switched on. Okay, this should... Oh, right, yeah. Didn't hear this, sorry. So the car just took over the driving task, and she carefully took her hands off the steering wheel and is making herself comfortable with some water, and soon she's going to take her phone and relax. And you can also see that very soon she's getting a little bit tired. So the automation is, this level here is perfectly green, so the automation state is very confident. Fast forward 25 minutes about, and yeah, she is still looking at her phone and sometimes at the road, and the automation level, the confidence is decreasing a little bit. So where we are now is on a motorway scenario, and the car is staying on the same lane all the time. And this study has been going on for days, so this is, I think, the 4th time as she's sitting in an automated car. And we were kind of looking at what people are doing when they're driving in automated vehicles. So every now and then she's looking at the road and looking at the status indicator. And what is happening out there is that some fog is arising. So that's the reason the car is not able to, that's the reason why the car is not kind of confident enough, and why the status indicator is lowering and lowering. So this is happening for the first time after several hours of her sitting in that car and experience in the automation. So she puts already one hand on the steering wheel and she's monitoring what's happening around her. And I think she's expecting something. And it's a really, really good example. It's a very nice example of teamwork between the car and the human being. So you can see how the car is lowering its kind of automation state and how the driver is kind of getting into the driving task, kind of step by step. So now we are at red. So there's at the moment quite a lot of fog out there in the motorway scenario. So participant has two hands on the steering wheel. She's sitting upright, looking around, checking the mirrors. And at this moment, you hear a loud beep at this moment in the car. She's taking over and the car stops doing the driving. And she's perfectly able to control and to stabilize the vehicle. I have another example. So the automation starts and he is taking the hands off the steering wheel, grabs a research paper and starts reading. Grabs a pen and he forgets everything about the driving task. So he's very concentrated and stops monitoring what's going on around him. Fast forward to 20-25 minutes. The automation state is at its end. So, and he's very concentrated, reading his paper. And he has to take over now. There's alarm, there's a loud noise, and yeah, he throws away his paper, just noticing that he still has the pen, throws the pen away, and you can see the strong steering corrections. So he must have been swerving a little bit, and it took him some time to actually properly stabilize the vehicle and confidently drive, and also to get aware of actually what's going on around him. So those were examples of level 3 automation, where the car was driving at certain points, and then when the participant, the human, was driving at other times. So level 3 automation requires a responsible driver, a responsible person aware of the surroundings at all times. And there are lots of problems we human factors people are working with. So as you could see, people are getting fatigued quite quickly and start mind wandering. Actually, automation is considered one source of distraction. And the takeover times are relatively long. So it can take 15 seconds for a driver to take over, has been found in Leeds University, and it can take up to 40 seconds for a driver to fully stabilize the vehicle. And these are quite long times, considering that sometimes it can take split seconds for something to happen on the roads. Over time, the skills of the drivers can degrade. So you have the case that often the easier driving tasks are automated, and then suddenly the driver has to do the difficult tasks that the car is unable to do. And this has also been shown in aviation. It's very problematic. And over time, the drivers trust the vehicles, even people who haven't trusted automated vehicles before. In studies, it has been shown that very quickly they trust, they disengage, and they might also get a bit complacent and not put all the effort into kind of taking over the control when it's actually needed. And then you get also to misuse, which you've probably seen or heard about in the case of Teslas, where people kind of move to the back seat and take videos and put them on YouTube. So how could we deal with this? We talk about kind of keeping the driver engaged or re-engaging the driver. So we could kind of make sure the driver is staying in the loop while the automation is on. Kind of we could give them tasks or could kind of make them in some way monitor the environment. And this could also mean that we need to give back certain tasks to the driver so that the driver is at least doing something during driving. But then we kind of step back again in the automation levels. What's also possible is, or what will be done, I'm quite sure, is to monitor the driver at all times. I mean, cars are already able to monitor steering inputs and pedal inputs, and you can infer fatigue from them, for example. What we're doing in driving simulators is to monitor the eye movements a lot, and then they are also an indicator for stress or fatigue. Say when you're fatigued, you're blinking more. And when you're not engaged, you're looking around more, you're not looking on the road. So we still have many problems, and there are more and more voices saying, okay, don't do level 3 automation. It's dangerous, it's complicated, and there have also been the first fatalities. So instead of adding functionality to the automation and increasing the automation level by level and taking the control away from the human step by step, there are increasing number of announcements that car manufacturers and technology companies are working towards full automation. So this is not necessarily kind of going from 0 to 5. It could also be somewhere from level 1 or 2 towards 4-ish. And this is the big, I'd say, the kind of disruption. Because full automation is quite different in a way of the automation levels where human beings are still considered. And fully automated vehicles doesn't just mean that fully automated vehicles will be on the road. The Transport Systems Catapult, for example, hypothesizes or expects that at the same time you have more electric vehicles, more connected vehicles, and more lightweight vehicles on the roads. So the environment could really kind of be disrupted and changed. So who is announcing this? What's going on? So Volvo is announcing tests in London by 2017 with kind of semi-automated vehicles, and by 2018 with fully automated vehicles. So Volvo is really one of the companies that are very committed to driving safety and expect that fully autonomous vehicles will increase safety. Tesla is very, very optimistic, and it has been said that fully autonomous vehicles would be on the market, on the roads, in 2 years' time. Let's see whether this is going to happen. And Ford created a subsidiary called Smart Mobility, and they are working with fully autonomous vehicles and alternative concepts, mobility concepts. And they say fully autonomous vehicles could be on the market by 2021. What I like, or what I find quite interesting about Ford's announcement is that the idea of autonomous vehicles isn't just like on the very kind of luxury high level. It could be kind of affordable for the general public in a way. But then again, we also have the luxury class, of course. BMW announcing the iNext by 2021 as well. So that would be an electric vehicle, fully autonomous, with some facilities also for drivers to drive if they want to. So when we talk about fully autonomous vehicles, what does it mean for us, the human factors researchers? Do we still need to consider the human beings? I mean, of course, we have humans in vehicles who need to trust this entire system. And they change from being an active driver to someone, to people who have like a nice experience traveling from A to B. And they need to communicate with the car, and there will be, say, modern human-machine interfaces will, for example, include natural language interfaces, where the car is becoming a bit like a like a friend, like Kit in Knight Rider. And you can kind of talk to them, and they can make sure that your travel experience is as nice as possible. And the cars can also support non-driving activities. So an interesting question is, how would satellite navigation systems look like? I mean, of course, you don't need them anymore to navigate, but you could still use them for engaging with the outside environment, seeing where you are, and figuring out where the next cafe is. And, I mean, who doesn't like driving? I mean, as a German, kind of. Okay. Looking back, I personally, I've really enjoyed kind of driving on the motorway where there's no speed limit, kind of driving above, is it like 150 miles an hour, sunny day, motorway is free. So this is like has been like very, very pleasurable. It's fun, particularly just after I passed my driving test. So. And the question is how car manufacturers can keep up this driving pleasure, because Audi and Jaguar Land Rover, they're still saying, okay, we don't want to treat people as cargo. We just don't just want to transport them. We want to have to deliver a good experience for them, a good driving experience. So maybe it will be possible only on racetracks sometime in the future, or within certain boundaries on motorways. But then again, I'm asking myself, if driving pleasure is also risk and speed, like how would that look like? I don't know. We have the humans outside of the vehicles who need to feel safe. They also need to trust the vehicles, and ideally also have a way of communicating with the vehicles as you'd normally do, or as you do today with the driver. Like, how would the eye contact look like? There are some ways for cars to indicate with lights, for example, and symbols that pedestrians are recognized and that they are okay to cross the road. And so this will be quite interesting when we come to the transition period, where some cars will be automated or autonomous and other cars won't. So you will have some kind of mixed traffic with kind of mixed cultures and mixed habits. So that could be quite interesting. Looking at the traffic environment, there have been really interesting discussions about ethics. When we talk about ethics, we have this kind of trolley problem, the dilemma between simply, say, protecting the driver, or protecting the driver by steering and hitting a pedestrian, or letting the driver crash into a wall and killing the driver, basically. So what would one do, and who is making the decisions? So this is a really complicated problem, and it's still not really clear for me whether the engineers are making the decisions or whether there are going to be regulations. And this is one of the big problems in my mind to solve. And then, I mean, for the environment, hopefully things will be more efficient, travel quality improves, and time improves. So, yeah, and lifestyles. I mean, as I mentioned, luxury vehicles, they will be status symbols. Teslas are already status symbols in some areas. But then again, there is potential for people with mobility issues to be able to participate in kind of to travel and to participate in society. Connected vehicles are coming with this, with the automation, as cars need to communicate to other cars, kind of make sure where they are. You also have more opportunities, kind of from vehicle to vehicle with vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to infrastructure. You can talk to others, and you can talk about problems, communicate problems you find on the road, and the car. And the car can also kind of take care of its own maintenance. And then we have the problem of misuse. Here you see a pigeon holding up the traffic. I've been running field trips when I was still in the Institute for Transport Studies in Leeds. We went to see the park shuttle that I showed earlier on in Rotterdam. And as we arrived with the students, the first thing some students did was just run in front of the park shuttles, just to see whether they stop. And luckily, they stopped. But so, especially when we talk about these really like small pods in pedestrianized zones, or what means pedestrianized zones, then normally pedestrianized zones, will they be able to move around when there are pedestrians very comfortable in just walking into their way? I'm quite running out of time. Okay. So I'm briefly going through this. As we talk about fully autonomous vehicles, there is, of course, AI is a big part of it. It will help with maintenance, figuring out what's going on with the car, and taking care of informing the right places. We are able to know about the driver's state. That's part of the recent study I've been doing myself, kind of measuring how the driver is doing, looking at you can almost kind of measure their stress, their workload, their emotions, and then adapt maybe music, lighting, to improve the experience for the driver. Drivers have different goals. So some are just in a hurry. They just want to go from A to B as fast as possible. Some are quite kind of aggressive. How would you imagine like a sports car driver? How would an autonomous car kind of drive for them? And others might prefer very kind of more elegant experience, like in a Rolls Royce or so. So personalization is an interesting topic to discuss. So one problem that comes with artificial intelligence, especially when the car is learning in the actual road environment as it is today, is that cars are able to pick up the bad behaviors of humans, or the bad habits. The Google car accident, for example, what happened there is that the Google car learned that in some crossings, cars are driving to the right on the road, kind of almost creating an informal right turning lane that doesn't officially exist. So, and it's not really correct behavior, but the Google car ended up doing the same, and then another car, actually a lorry driver, didn't expect this type of behavior from the Google car, and that's why they ended up kind of crashing into each other. Not much happened there, but then you can see that, I mean, no one was injured, but then you can see that we kind of need to figure out how autonomous cars should drive. I mean, should they drive like humans, or yeah, okay, sorry. Should they drive like humans or like machines? I'm going to talk about this in a second. And then kind of over time, as there are less kind of humans driving on the road, and the car's behavior might change and kind of learn and adapt, will the humans in the car actually accept this and understand this? Will it make sense to them? So coming back to the question, humans or machines? I mean, I've heard this several times. When autonomous vehicles are on the road, for drivers it would be like driving in the train, so there isn't much to worry about. However, there are studies that show that people accept automated behaviors or automated driving behaviors more when they are more human-like. This includes kind of braking behavior, driving around curves, but it has also been shown that drivers are sometimes not comfortable with the short distances you can find in the Platoons, which then has implications for the kind of efficiency of these Platoons. When drivers don't accept them, then you don't get the fuel-saving benefits of them. So maybe the cars would drive like better humans, but then again, what is that? And people will have different expectations, and they will be disappointed over time. So in research, we try to address these challenges. So I guess I really quickly mentioned basically that as the cars don't exist yet, the autonomous vehicles don't exist yet, we need to kind of answer our questions. We can still find ways to answer our questions today. We can explore the problems and boil them down to small research questions, and then try, and often we can find ways to answer them without having the full autonomous scenario on the roads. One example is that if you want to look at mobility improvements for elderly people, and just say kind of, would they travel more, would they participate more in the society, you could also give them taxi vouchers and see what's happening and how they'd use them. And of course, over time we get more opportunities as there will be more automated vehicles on the road. So takeaways, there's lots of potential with automated vehicles, but also dangers and problems. So many car manufacturers and technology companies are kind of creating subsidiaries announcing fully autonomous vehicles. And the challenges for us human factors researchers still remain, because there will still be humans in the vehicles, outside of the vehicles, and in the wild traffic environment. And I find it quite interesting to look at the challenges posed by artificial intelligence. And we do our best to kind of answer what we can today with the research methods we have. So, are we taking the human factors researcher out of the loop with autonomous driving? No, we still need to consider the human being. So that's all, that's me. And please don't forget to rate the session. Yeah.